September 7th, 2023 Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee. And at the top of our agenda is to approve our minutes from June the 1st, the 13th, 14th, 21st, and August 10th. And I'm going to call on our Vice Chairman, Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the privilege of reviewing the Sears and Roebuck catalog of all these minutes, and I find them in order and move for approval.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Serino, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So we've got that taken care of. Second thing is public comments. We have no one signed up for public comments tonight, so we'll go ahead and move on to our investment report.
I'm Ted Beatty, the Rutherford County Trustee. Short report, we didn't have any bids this month. Our regular banking rate is $4.90. The LGIP rate for the month was $5.25, and our ICS, which is a short-term rate that on the money market, is $5.71 for the month. So those are our rates.
All right, any further questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Chairman.
Next is our fund condition report. Michael?
I want to talk about the revenue report for a second. And as you noticed, last month I didn't prepare one because we didn't have a lot of our revenue is a month or 2 months behind. But this month we do have one. And as you can see, we're right on track with where we should be at this time of year. But I do want to point out 2 or 3 highlights. One of those is development tax or school facilities tax is up almost 120% as compared to this time last year. So that's good news. I did talk with the Building and Codes Department to see if there was any large complexes, apartment complexes or something that were approved, and they said it was just really single-family dwellings or townhomes, that they didn't have anything that stood out to them. Also, you'll notice on there's a 0 for hotel motel tax. That is 2 months behind, so next month you'll start seeing that reported. And then also we don't have any property tax revenue yet because that's not levied until October, so I just kind of wanted to point those things out. And as the trustee mentioned, our interest rates continue to be very advantageous to the county, so we're right where we should be. And then I wanted to touch on one other thing tonight, and that is this week we did have our bond rating calls, and we did get our bond rating for the county. And so we did get rated by both Moody's and S&P, and so I will cover both of those briefly. The first one I'll cover is S&P, and we continue to be rated AA+, which is very good news. That's a very good rating. S&P's comments, I'll look at touch on a couple of things that they had in their report. They affirmed all of our previous debt ratings at AA+, and then a new rating for our bond issue coming up at the end of this month. The one negative that they pointed out for us was economic metrics, and I'll read from their report. They said our economic metrics, albeit strong, remain well below those of our peers at a higher rating level. But one thing I want to point out is they're comparing us to counties and cities across the country as far as income level. And so that was one of the things that hurt us there from potentially a AAA. And then Moody's did continue to rate us AAA. So that is very good news. And I'll read a couple of tidbits from their report. The 2 biggest thing for us that helped us maintain our AAA, the number one thing was our solid financial position with healthy reserve levels. We talked a lot about that on the rating call, and so I just didn't want that to go unnoticed of the work this body did during the budget cycle. Made all the difference in the world. Factors that could lead to a downgrade, there's 3. 2 of them are in our control, 1 of them is not. The first one is significant increases in long-term liabilities, which reduce the county's overall financial health, and if we had a sizable decline in reserves or liquidity levels. And we talked a lot about that during cash flow during our budget cycle. And we also received the highest score possible on our governance score. So that's a direct testament to this body and the work you do to try to keep us fiscally stable. And then I want to point out one other thing in case you see this or you have constituents that ask. So under Moody's rating, while we are AAA rated, which is the best score you can get, we are, if you look at their scoring metrics, we are a single A rated county on debt. But I want to point out why in case you were to see that. They do not take into account the school's revenue because they are a component unit of the county on our financial report. So that is something that is unique to Tennessee, to all counties, cities in Tennessee. So I just wanted to point that out. And so with our financial metrics with that, we would have been a AA2. So I just wanted to point out, you know, if we wouldn't have done such hard work during the budget cycle, we would have could have potentially dropped even below that. But the good news is we maintained our AAA is what I want to take away from that. And then our bond is scheduled to be issued at the end of this month or first week of October for the schools, the transfer station, and the I-24 project, just as an update there. And with that, that's my report.
Do you have any conversation with Moody's about our governance score, or was that just with Ford's?
Yes, they both commented on that. The two things that hurt us on both reports were the economic or the income per capita per person. But yes, we did talk to both Moody's and S&P about that. Moody's also rated us very high, or as high as you could get on the governance, and then so did S&P. They comment on things we can control and can't control. The things that we can control, we were rated very high or as high as you can get. The things that hurt us were the economic area that we live in maybe isn't as high a per capita income as, let's say, Palm Beach, Florida, or New York City or something. And that hurts us, which is out of our control for the most part. And then the other thing that hurt us is the way Tennessee does their debt issuance, where the schools cannot issue debt, so we have to issue their debt. However, they don't count the schools over $500 million in revenue. So, and both of their reports state that they take that into account, and that's why Moody's chooses to rate us AAA, even though that on paper we're not. When you look at the debt metrics, it looks like we're kind of upside down, even though we're really not.
Thank you, Michael.
Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but did you not receive a complimentary letter from the comptroller regarding the status of our budget recently?
Yes, our budget did get our yearly budget did get approved. All of our liquidity ratios were very, very good from the comptroller's office. They had nothing negative to say about the budget here from the comptroller's office.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve the report.
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion on the report? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Risk management. See a fellow grandfather running up here.
Good evening, Ed Elam, Insurance and Risk Management Director. So on the 264 tracker for the month of August, for August of 2023, revenue $1,742,018, expenses $2,029,288, revenue less expenditures $287,270. The total for the year is $16 million in revenue, $16,090,616. Expenses, $12,924,935. Revenue less expenditures, $3,165,681. And then your fiscal year totals, revenue, $3,421,469. Expenses, $3,968,709. Revenue less expenditures is a negative $547,240. For the 266 fund, you will see that workers' comp had 0, OJI had $20,431.43, and for the total, year-to-date is $20,431.43. The legal report for the month of August, $27,370.85. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Elam about his report? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Piercy makes a motion.
Second.
Mr. Sereno seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Just to qualify what I mentioned, him coming up, we found out that our grandsons are in the same kindergarten class at Grandparents' Day. So that was kind of fun.
I told my daughter, I said, make sure he's nice to him. Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Hopefully they'll be nice to each other. So, all right. Next item is the item 6, general fund budget transfer for the election commission. Welcome.
Good evening, Alan Farley, Administrative Elections. I've got a small budget amendment here. We want to move $2,000 from Fund 349 to Fund 599, other charges for recruitment for poll workers, which we're starting the process moving toward the 2024 election cycle.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Mark, call roll on this one.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sreno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Alan. Item 7, general fund budget amendments for the sheriff's office.
Good evening. I'm Steve Spence. I'm a deputy chief at the sheriff's office. First amendment is to allocate reserved rollover funds of $238,933 awarded to the Rutherford County for the mental health patient transport grant for the financial year of 24 and 23. In the mental health transport investment income was $14,192. Requesting to accept the $253,125 and placing it into our other contracted services.
I'm going to ask the committee, do y'all want to stop and vote on this issue or look at the rest? Michael, we can, can't we? The only thing I want to point out, if you notice that this decrease is coming out of a restricted fund, that was set up from the grant money that was left over from last year. If I'm off on this, Michael, please correct me. But it's basically transferring back into them what they got from the grant. You know, if we didn't spend this, we'd end up having to return it anyway. But anyway, just in case you see that restricted fund balance, that's what that's all about. It's where that money was transferred, so we'd know where that came from. Please continue.
Thank you, sir. This budget amendment allocates funds awarded to the Rutherford County for the violence crime intervention funds. This is a no-match formula based on grant that ends June 30th for 2025. The award funds 2 new positions, a community outreach coordinator and a community outreach co-responder. In addition, these funds will be used to purchase office furniture for the new employees, outreach materials, literature for the community events, mobile projector and screen, cell phone services, fees, training and certifications, and a digital message board installed at the sheriff's office. Requesting to accept the $211,855 placed in various line items.
But that's got all of those that are together. We'll have to go separate for that next one, won't we? Item 8.
Yes, sir. That's under.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee about the proposed changes that he's asked for? No more discussion. I'll entertain a motion for these, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. All right, Steve, go ahead. Item
This
eight.
amendment's for the drug fund. This amendment is to move money from the restricted for public safety to data processing equipment into motor vehicles, requesting $67,000 from restricted public safety, placing $40,000 in data processing and $27,000 in the motor vehicle line item.
You've heard the request. Any questions? Chairman Harris.
So the 27,000 for motor vehicles, is that repairs or is that a new vehicle,
To purchase vehicles.
the purchase?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve?
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Johnson, thank you. And no other move to make discussion. Please call roll.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch, Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, how many vehicles does that give the drug fund, this purchase to the drug fund?
What they do, when they buy one, they trade one in to rotate them in and out of the division. I think they've got 15 to 16.
Altogether?
Don't hold that number. That's roughly the number. Yes, sir.
Good question. Next item is item number 9, which is the SRO grants from the state we were waiting on.
Yes, we're requesting to apply for the State of Tennessee statewide School Resource Officer Grant. This is a no-match grant for 1 year. The grant provides $75,000 per school. We're applying for $3,750,000.
That would add one SRO officer to each school that we have in the county, is that correct?
No, so you can't use, if you already got SROs in a school, we're planning on using it to supplement their pay.
Okay.
It won't add a new one, and it'll fund up to $75,000 per SRO, per school number, per school. And so right now, this is a one-time funding mechanism, so that's why, if you remember during the budget process, we weren't sure if we were going to get this, what the dollar amount was per school. So that's why you don't see a dollar amount tonight, because this is an application to apply for that. So if this is awarded, then we will, at some point bring a budget amendment back, but this will supplement the salaries of our existing SROs. Now, keep in mind, this will not, the county will still continue to fund the high schools that we have multiple SROs at and things like that, or a lot of our SROs with benefits and insurance. This won't cover an entire salary, so the county will continue to do that, but this would be $75,000 per school with an official school number.
Quick question. How does this, in the news lately, there's been a lot, Rutherford County received $2 million. How does that, have y'all seen that in the news reports?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Well, there have been news reports out there. I saw it just the other morning, and I was curious how it ties in, but if there's not a baseline understanding, then I'll withdraw my question.
There is some funding available to the schools that's some different security fund money that's separate from this, which may be what you're seeing, but that would be separate from this. There was some as part of the legislative session. The Department of Education and Safety was trying to, I'm looking at Brian back there, but there was some school safety money, if that's what you're speaking of, but that's separate than this.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any personally. Okay, so you've heard the request to apply for the grant. That's all we're doing tonight is a request to apply. Do I hear a motion to allow us to apply?
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second to allow them apply to the grant. There's no money passing here right now, so all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Steve, I believe that caught you up, unless
if
you
I-
got something else.
Yes, sir. Want to pass on, Tennessee Correction Institute came and inspected the jail. We got the report back last Thursday. We passed with no issues. This is the 7th year in the row that we've passed with no issues. Just want to share that.
Good job.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
All right, item 10. General Purpose School Fund Budget Amendment.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Runyon, CFO, Rutherford County Schools. This is a fund budget amendment out of our general purpose fund, which is Fund 141. And what this amendment is to do is to fund the purchase of the building and property at 814 South Church Street. The property is listed with Matthews Real Estate Investment Services and has been negotiated to be acquired not to exceed $1,200,000. This property will be funded by amending General Purpose Fund 141 by decreasing $39,000 unassigned fund balance and increasing transfers out account 99-100 590 transfers to other funds in the amount of $1,200,000. In FY 22-23, a similar amendment was done for this same purchase, but due to the timing of the approval for the purchase of the property, the funds moved back into unassigned fund balance at fiscal year end. This amendment moves the funds out of fund balance and transfers it to the building projects fund.
As he said, this is something that's already been voted on and passed by this committee. I think it was 6-1 vote. I happen to be the no vote on that, and I'll remind you why. Is the fund that they're bringing it out of, the 141, which was shared revenue. We don't know what schools are going to be represented in this building. Do y'all know yet?
We do know for sure it's going to be a 612 alternative school with the possibility of a K-12 down the road. Once we get the renovations done and everything, that'll be able to determine what grades are going to actually be able to be there.
Well, the reason I'm bringing that up, of course, is revenue that's shared versus what doesn't have to be shared. You know, the county loses a lot of money when we use shared revenue when we don't have to.
I do know also they're looking at some administrative offices in that building as well, so it just may not be strictly an alternative school. It may be also for some of our administrative offices because our central office is pretty full right now. So.
Okay. Committee, anybody on the committee have questions?
Has the contract been signed?
Yes, we're actually 2 weeks out from closing, I believe.
I think it had been signed, but I'm not, it was either the end of this month or October maybe that they were going to sign. It's been a week or two since I've talked to Jeff Reed, the school board's attorney, but I do think it was in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think he spoke with the board last night or Tuesday night, and he said that we're a couple weeks out from the closing date.
And do y'all have an estimated renovation cost and source for that money?
There's an approximate cost, but we don't have a complete one yet, no.
Have an estimate?
There's an estimate, yeah, we didn't include it in this because we're planning on pulling that from other funds. So we didn't want to put the renovation cost in there because we weren't exactly sure as far as how much it was going to cost because we still have tenants in that building. So once they completely, leave and go away, we will actually be able to see exactly what I will be able to do with the renovations in there. Until we know who for sure is getting out by the time we purchase the building, we don't know the exact renovations that are going to take place. So I'm going to say in the $500,000 to $600,000 range of renovations, but don't quote me on that 100%. I do know that was a number that was thrown out, though.
I won't quote you. And thank you.
Well,
Any further questions? Paul?
That was my question. Thank you.
welcome.
Piercy?
So you're 2 weeks out from closing date on buying the property? Is that what you just said?
Correct.
If we vote this down tonight, what happens then?
We do have money in our general purpose account to be able to pay for it. but it would have seriously put a strain on those account numbers to be able to buy it. And we also possibly could be able to purchase it out of building funds, our BP account as well. But it was just not something that's budgeted in that particular fund, because that fund, is what we go to the bond market for. So the purchase of this building was not put into the building fund, because, as the chairman said, this was approved on May 4th, this same purchase by this body. So that's the reason why we're bringing it back, because what happened is, because we didn't get the purchase agreement put together before the end of the fiscal year, that money that was approved that was moved out of fund balance to begin with, rolled back into fund balance at fiscal year end. So basically, we're taking that same money that rolled into fund balance and putting it back towards the purchase of this building.
Thank you.
Okay, you've heard the discussion. Any other questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinio?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
No. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item. 10, General Fund Budget Amendment for Emergency Management.
Chairman, Committee, Chris Clark, Public Safety Director, Emergency Management. Tonight, I come before you requesting a budget amendment of $454,497 from unassigned fund balance to 312, contract with private agencies. We discussed this in public safety. And this is for our Motorola maintenance agreement that was approved by the County Commission, I believe in 2019, along with the radio system. We've had some difficulties, and we felt that this maintenance agreement was prematurely placed forward. We've soon later found out that we had an employee that signed a system acceptance. That employee no longer works here, and it was unknown that that individual had signed that. After taking this once I received this bill, I took this to Mayor Ketron at the time. We talked to Motorola at length. Since then, Mayor Joe Carr came in office, and I was in his office the second day of him taking office concerning this matter. After many meetings, letters, attorneys, we're at a point where this could be detrimental to our public safety. We felt that try to fight this as much as possible, and at this point it's detrimental to our radio system and our public safety that we go ahead and pay this. That is my request of a budget amendment.
Wasn't it common knowledge when this come through that the maintenance agreement on this Motorola was additional $4 million on top of the other cost?
I'm not understanding the question, Commissioner.
Do you recall what the radio cost? Wasn't it like was it 16 or 20 million?
It was approximately $18 million radio system.
Right. And wasn't there an additional $4 million at that time for the maintenance contract also?
This contract...
In a 10-year contract?
Yes, sir. It's actually a 9-year. The first year, which was warranty.
Right.
And And with that signature of that agreement, that started April 1 of 2021. Come the next April, I received a bill in June of this amount of money and then realized we got a problem. And so back and forth with Motorola on this maintenance agreement that we felt that was premature, because in the contract, there's areas where it says final system sign-off, and that has not occurred yet. We are still working on this radio system to fully build it out. We still have a CUD tower that's located on Halls Hill Pike that still has to be erected, and therefore we have not provided a final system sign-off on this system. However, we are using the system, if that makes sense.
So the maintenance contract money was not in your budget?
That is correct.
Not in your budget?
That is correct.
Why not? Because it was discussed when the contract was taken.
And articles in that contract said final system sign-off. We had not signed anything off, that to our knowledge. However, we had an employee that's no longer here that we found out has signed a beneficial, we're benefiting from the system. When I received the bill, that's when then I found out that that's when that maintenance system or the maintenance started.
Not trying to give you a hard time on
I
it,
understand.
but I recall it because it was being boasted that it was just going to cost X amount of dollars. Nobody was adding a $4 million maintenance contract to the cost. They weren't adding it to it. If you're going to have a 10-year maintenance contract, you're going to pay for it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is our attorney here? Because I've got some questions about this. We're looking at almost $500,000. I was on public safety at the time, and my understanding with this contract is that we were not to pay for maintenance until we had our towers all up and operating. And I know darn well we got one that ain't even up. So where's our attorney, and what did he have to say about this? And he should be sitting there right now. I was actually told he was going to be here.
Can I ask Mayor Carr to approach?
If Mayor Carr wants to speak on it, Mayor, you may know something about it. I don't know, but.
Joe Carr, Rutherford County Mayor. So this first came to my attention, as Mr. Clark said, first week of September. And it was at that time that we understood from Motorola that there are two documents that are relevant to this discussion. There is the contract with regard to the system and the system implementation and installation. That is the $18 million contract that Mr. Clark referenced a minute ago. There is a separate contract, an addendum called the maintenance contract. It's typical in a system integration contract for there to be two contracts: the appropriation for the services and the equipment, and a subsequent contract that governs the ongoing maintenance of said equipment and services. The dispute is that the contract in the with regard to the assessment of Mr. Christensen and Mr. Hennessy is that there is a disagreement in the contract, those contracts. The contract for installation and services says that the beneficial use is the point at which the maintenance agreement begins. The addendum to the contract, which is the maintenance agreement, says very specifically it's when there's final system sign-off. Rutherford County in 2022 had an individual without authorization sign off on beneficial use. He did not have that authorization. That authorization resides with the county mayor. I don't know the circumstances on how he signed off on that or where he thought he had the authority, but he does not. So when we met with Motorola on the first week of September, we outlined that we disagreed strongly that that authority existed with a mid-level management employee, that authority to sign off on beneficial use resided with the county mayor. They did not protest. Indeed, there were a number of radios and systems that had yet to be delivered and installed that, in my mind, constituted beneficial use. It was at this point that we engaged Motorola to get to the point where we could get to a not only beneficial use, but system sign-off so maintenance could begin. We did not hear from Motorola probably for at least 3 months, maybe 4. Would that be right, Chris? Yes. But we continued to pursue them because, to be quite honestly, gentlemen, I have a background in systems integration. It's what I did in a previous life. And so I understand that there is the contract for systems integration and services, and then there's a separate contract that regarding the maintenance services related to those systems and those services. And so we got to the point where we were telling Motorola, said, okay, all we're asking is that we're not talking about not paying for the 9 years, Commissioner Piercy, for the maintenance at $452,000 a year. What we're talking about is the start date of the maintenance agreement. Motorola was not willing in any way to negotiate with us. And so we have in the contract the ability to go to mediation to settle the dispute. And they were resistant to that. And so the calculus at this point became a very critical part of our first responder services and what potentially could be a catastrophe in the event of a serious injury or death because we could not respond in a timely manner because the radio system was not being maintained by the vendor, in this case Motorola. So I will tell you flatly, I was between a rock and a hard place. I had to make a very difficult decision. It was my decision to ask for this budget amendment. Not because it's the right thing to do, because it is not. I, along with Nick Christensen and Eric Hennessy, I believe that our interpretation of the addendum, which is the maintenance contract, is the correct interpretation because it specifically says that the maintenance agreement does not begin until final system sign-off. There has not been final system sign-off, Mr. Chairman, because the final tower has not been erected yet. You're correct in that. But we have done a test, and we have met the minimum standard of the test. But even if it were, not everything's been installed. So it is with regret that Mr. Clark is coming to you today to ask for this $452,000 to begin the maintenance agreement. Otherwise, Motorola will refuse to maintain the system. I'll be glad to take questions.
Where's our attorney?
You'll have to ask the attorney that. He does not report to me.
I'd advise that we put this off till we have our attorney in front of us to explain it to us. That's my take on this, but there's 7 of us sitting here. I'd like to hear everybody else.
Can I ask Mayor Kelly a question? Mayor Carr, you said it's $450,000?
Approximately. I don't have the exact number. I thought it was 452, but I could be mistaken.
That's fine. I mean, it's
454, 497.
So when does that go in effect? I mean, are they like going back with all this argument in 6 months that we've been arguing? Are they going to retro it all the way back to that date, or it starts when we pay it?
We have already paid 1 year's maintenance. What this maintenance is beginning, I believe, September 1 through August 30th next year. I believe those are the begin and start dates, begin and end dates. So they have given us this month, my apologies, it's August 1 through July 30th. I'm a month ahead of myself. Is that correct, Chris? What if I got the dates right? I want to make sure I get the dates right.
Mr. Chairman, I have texted the county attorney, and I think he is going to come over here to this meeting from his office.
Excuse me, July 1 through June 30. Thank you.
Do we have stuff broke down right now?
Not to my knowledge.
You're just trying to get out in front of it? Okay.
Well, no, that's not exactly correct, because what the maintenance agreement includes is, in particular, and what's very important, patches, software upgrades. And quite honestly, gentlemen, unless you're familiar with software, hardware systems integration, it's not just hardware. It's not things breaking down. It includes those things, but quite honestly, the hardware is the small part of it. It's the software patches and the software upgrades and the consistent attacks on the system with ransomware and malware that has the mayor's office concerned. And so that is the issue. It's more of a software situation than it is a hardware, although it does include hardware.
Is this separate from the person that's overseeing the site where all the information comes? That's a separate entity, so that would continue outside of this maintenance agreement.
Microphone. Chris, can you use the microphone?
So the maintenance, we have a maintenance agreement, but there is an addendum that is an actual person that works for us that is on site, and he's called an FSO, Field Service Tech. And that's an amendment to this. So it could affect all of it. So we find that this is very critical. We have fought this and fought this and fought this for the last year and a half. And we reached to a critical spot.
I do want to add one thing if I can. Excuse me, Commissioner, if I can. So the ongoing concern on a system this expensive, $18 million is a lot of money. $454,000 a year is a lot of maintenance. A county like ours is going to continue to grow in its radio service first responder needs. We now have the Rutherford County School System that is interested in dialing into this system. I'll be candid. What should have been done when this first project was undertaken was we should have hired an outside consultant. And so I'll just be quite candid. We're looking at hiring an outside consultant now to find out what, if any, options we have, because I do not believe it's in the best interest of the county to be held to a proprietary vendor whereby we have no alternatives about how we continue to grow this first responder radio system need at such a cost. Because at that point, we have no choices other than pay their fees, pay their maintenance. And I'm trying to determine, do we have any other options other than Motorola moving forward? But with regard to the system we have right now, it's in the determination of Mr. Christensen, Mr. Hennessy, and myself that this produces the least amount of risk. I think Nick has entered the building, so if you want to.
I'll entertain a motion to, well, I don't think we need to suspend the rules. Nick, please come on up. So explain to me why we need to pay this, I won't say $500,000, I'll try to find it, I'm looking for the number in front of me, $400 and something thousand. Why are we having to, in my opinion, prematurely having to do this when we got towers and it not even up?
Appreciate that question. What I would suggest, because I've been involved in this with the county mayor and others, is that we go into executive session, and that might be more beneficial for us, so I can convey and download some information to you a little bit quicker and in a little bit more candid fashion. So with that, if we're going to do that, I would suggest that somebody make a motion to go into executive session, and then the only members that can be in this room would be the members of the committee. Really any commissioner could be in here, and your county mayor.
I'll suggest that we bypass this one, save it to other business and pick it up, but I'll Yeah, it's a long time. And we're going to have to be here. Are you going to have to be here?
Well, sure, sir.
That's good. Since you don't answer to the mayor, I'm really frustrated with the $500,000 just being blown off here. And that's what it looks like to me. Motorola is a good company, but there's been some mistakes made on our part, and I want to find out why. And yes, if it takes an executive session, I'm fine with that. But it's going to be after we finish our regular business here today. Unless you tell me different, I'm looking at you committee members.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to kick this to the heel.
Okay, I have a motion to move this to the end of the agenda. I hear a second.
Second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Going to the end. All right, we're moving on to the next item.
I have a question, Chairman. By doing that, is Nick in our pocket till we get done and do other business?
Nick works for us. He is salary. Now, on a specific trial, I think that we would be subject to hourly basis, but he's subject to be at any of our meetings if he's requested. That's my opinion. So no, there should not be any additional cost to him sitting here. Nick, you want to pipe up on that and let us know what your opinion is? He's not here, so he can't answer that. Any other questions? If not, Chris, you got a question before we, all right, have a seat.
I think he's the next, I think he's item 12.
I'm sorry.
The next request is an application to apply for a hazardous material emergency preparedness grant. This is we did receive this last year. This year is kind of unique. Last year we asked for some training equipment. It is our request to send 2 hazardous material team technicians per department, Rutherford County Fire, Smyrna Fire, Laverne Fire, and Murfreesboro Fire, to an international hazmat response team seminar that is located in Baltimore, Maryland. This is an 80-20 grant. There they would receive a prefla, if that's how you say it, or a lot of training in those areas. This would benefit all the teams, which we work hand in hand with these teams, and we help each other on many, many calls. The grant would be total of $21,600. Our 20% match would be $4,320, and a federal grant expenditure of $17,280.
You've heard the request. Have you got any questions for our director? I've got one. Do you have funds in your account to cover that $4,320?
No, sir, not at this time.
So the request would be to bring that out of unassigned fund balance.
And these grants, as you know, they come and go, and it's hard to budget for these grants as we go throughout the years. We have one to pop up here, one popped up there, and taking advantage of all of these grants, whether it's mitigation grant, hazmat grants, just many different types of grants. So to a certain extent, it's kind of unpredictable.
So did you have this grant last year? Sorry.
We did.
Did you have this grant last year?
We did.
So was it broke down the same way?
Yes, sir.
So it's just, okay.
And the amount has changed because of, according to what we're asking for.
So is it more or less?
I can't remember. I think it's just right there at it, somewhere.
So you're just asking for $4,320?
That is correct.
Okay.
Tonight is just the application to
Application
apply.
only.
There is no budget amendment before you tonight for this.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
You make a motion to approve the application. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's your second also. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? No. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 13. Houston County Agreement with Juvenile Detention.
Good evening. This is a contract with Houston County so that if they have young people that need juvenile detention bed, that we can, if we choose to, work with Houston County and detain their young person for them. This is the contract that you've been seeing for many years. The amount for the rate is $175 per day per child, and it has gone through our Juvenile Detention Center Board and also Public Safety. And I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Have we had a contract with Houston County before?
No, this is their first time.
Do you have available room for them if they have several, or?
Yeah, we do. The only issues that we've been having is with female detainees, just based on staffing ratios that we're required to have, and they know that. But since we're able to either accept or decline the young people, they just want options at this point, and so it's an option for them.
At $175 a child, is that a break-even point, or is it?
No, we've never been in a position where our bed rate would come close to paying for its detention care, but it doesn't cost any more to put a young person in a bed where there's already a staff member. That's why when we don't have any Rutherford County females, it can cause staffing issues for females, but it's not an issue for young men.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Sereno. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Strino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
All right. Item 14. Architectural and engineering fee proposal for recovery court renovation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Carr, Rutherford County Mayor, on behalf of LaShelle Ricks. We're requesting $84,894.75 for architectural engineering fees for anticipated construction costs for an expansion of recovery court. Be glad to take questions.
I have one. Mayor, this is the addition that you're wanting to do on Recovery Court?
It is both the addition and some renovation.
Okay, so this needs to really happen because we're in a bad shape right now. Is that correct?
We have a backlog of, last time I checked, of 115 waiting to get to the recovery court. The estimated ROI, if you just wanted to look at the finance part of this, the estimated ROI as opposed to incarceration is 10 to 1, not counting the recovering of lives.
Yeah, well, I'm basically talking about staff. We're in a situation where we don't have room for staff.
We are in a situation where we're limited on the grants that we can apply for because we don't have the room for staff, yes. Am I saying that accurately, Ms. Ricks?
Yes, we don't have the room for staff and clients to come in, so we're just kind of at a standstill.
Of all the projects this county is embarking on in the last year, quite honestly, this has the most, if you're just looking at straight finance ROI, this has the most favorable return, without question.
Mayor, I believe that you would agree that this is more an investment than a liability.
By an order of 10 to 1, Mr. Commissioner.
Absolutely. You need a motion to approve this, Mr. Chairman?
I do need a motion.
I so
yes.
move.
All right, I have a motion for approval. Second, Commissioner Irving. Mr. Smith.
Can I clarify something? The motion that was forwarded to this committee was not to exceed $85,000. And if acceptable, if that motion could say not to exceed $85,000, and this money is already in our capital projects fund, we would be shifting this from the Goldstein building project that is put on hold. So if that's acceptable, if you could make that part of your motion.
Paul, is that good with you, Commissioner Irving?
Good with me.
All right. So we do have a motion not to exceed $85,000, and also for this money to be brought from the Goldstein building funding. Any further discussion? I'll make a quick mention. I've talked to our maintenance department, and they tell me that there are some definitely needed renovations and problems that have to take place in the old existing building. I've been in that building several times myself back when Dr. Johns was there, so it's been around a while and is in need of some repair.
It is, and it's at the appropriate time. We will absolutely come back before this body after the engineering architectural work's done, and we will ask for the construction costs, which we believe are approximated at this point about $935,000. But right now, we're asking for the architectural and engineering work.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch? Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 15, the USDA lease extension and rate change for a portion of the Lane Agri-Park. Michael, are you going to do that one, or we got somebody here from the park?
I can do that one. So our lease with the USDA was up for renewal over at the Lane Agri-Park, and with the negotiation with the county and the USDA, the rental rate will increase from $15.50 to $20 per square foot. We did check with the checked with several real estate firms with the going commercial real estate per square foot rate, and this is in line with that. The USDA has already agreed to this increase as well, so that's what's before you tonight.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
In 2 seconds. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 16, general fund budget amendment for the ARP State Water Infrastructure Grant.
So this amendment is one that you saw identically from last fiscal year, and we brought this last fiscal year because we weren't sure when we were going to start the drawdown and the expense of these funds with the Consolidated Utility District. We did not do any drawdown on those funds the previous year, and so we did not spend any of the money or receive any of that money, and so that's why you're seeing this budget amendment again this year we did not expend any of that by June 30th, and so we do expect to receive that money and spend that down. It's a pass-through grant with the Consolidated Utility Department, and they are providing any match funds required. Consolidated Utility is going to provide, so this would be at no cost to the county.
Any questions for Michael on this grant request? Not, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Piercy, thank you. Second, Commissioner Irving. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 17, general fund budget amendment for security at 319 North Maple Street.
I always have to do that. Well, hello. I'm Lisa Kroll, Rutherford County Clerk. And the reason I'm here tonight is we're asking for a budget amendment. However, it is through the mayor's budget. But it is needed at 319 North Maple Street. and I'm the one that's brought it to everyone's attention. So I'm the one, and that's the reason I'm speaking on it. However, the mayor's available if we have any more questions, and Michael Smith can help me as well. But there is a need to take what we currently have from a morning position to a full-day position, and through Crimson, and they would still continue to help with the situation that we had when we originally filled that, and it was because of parking, and it has worked. However, instead of asking for another full-time position, we're just adding on to what's already there, and so that we can have security inside our building when needed as well. And I welcome any questions.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Second, discussion. How many people will you actually have working security?
Just one.
But they'll be full-time, so half a day, they're full day? Okay. And that 50,000, is that the total amount, or is that just the additional cost?
So that amount, because we needed authorization to negotiate or have a contract with Crimson, and so we extrapolated the current hourly rate that the guard downstairs, who is full-time, and so we came up with that amount not to exceed 50,000. We think it might be a little less than that. We weren't sure exactly what the hourly rate was going to be, and so that's how we came up with that, was by using what we pay for downstairs.
Okay. Any other questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Item 18, funding for architectural and engineering fees for a forensic center and EMS station. Here. Staying busy tonight.
I am. Joe Carr, Rutherford County Mayor. Denise Martin. Denise, exactly what is your title?
Supervisor of Medical Examination.
You know, I've never known that. Thank you. 1 year, and I just know you're invaluable, so thank you. What we're asking for is $1 million for architectural engineering design fees for the proposed forensic center. This forensic center has a projected cost of $12 to $14 million. That is not what we're asking for tonight. We're asking for $1 million for architectural and design fees with Bart Klein. Bart Klein has submitted this proposal, and so we need this to begin the process of, again, the engineering of the facility, which will take approximately 9 months. If this facility meets the approval of this body and the full commission, then we would come back for the full commission in the next budget cycle for the necessary funding. There was an amendment that was added to this in public safety that included an EMS facility. That of the original scope. What we can do is we can do the entire site available. Up there's about 10 acres of total of about 17 or 18 acres off of Weekly Lane. And so we would do the site work or site engineering work for the entire remaining 10 acres. So that part of the engineering for a potential EMS facility would be included. But I want to make sure the amendment was put on in public safety after Mr. Klein had submitted his proposal for engineering and architectural work, and I'll be glad to take questions.
Is there any estimated cost on the EMS station?
I'm sorry?
Is there any estimated cost on the EMS station?
I think the site work would be included because we're going to do site work for the entire remaining 10 acres with regard to architectural work for the actual building for the EMS station. It is not included in here, but Commissioner Piercy, I don't believe it will be necessary, and the reason is because we have a pretty standardized architectural design that we use throughout the county. that, in my estimation and Mr. Gaither's estimation, we can duplicate. So we don't think this is a problem, but I just want to make sure it wasn't a part of the original scope that I asked Mr. Klein to give us. It came on later in public safety. So I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands how the EMS station got tacked on to the forensic center.
So will there be an additional charge over the $1 million by adding the EMS station?
No.
Design?
No.
He's just going to do that for free?
Well, we're not asking him to do architectural design for the EMS station. We already have architectural designs for the EMS station. It is my understanding and my belief that we can incorporate the site work within the entire scope of the facility. We are not anticipating any additional costs for the EMS station. If we do, that will be something we will have to address separately at a later date.
Do we have an EMS station down there now in Smyrna?
Mr. Gaither, can you come forward and tell us where our closest EMS station is to Weekly Lane at that facility? Because I do not know. With your permission, Mr. Chairman.
The closest one to the Weekly Lane is the one on Enon Springs. So it's between Nissan, it's right beside the old Smyrna Hospital, or the Smyrna Police Department now. So it's fairly close, but that unit that's on Enon Springs is probably the busiest unit in the county.
Unit at Stonecrest?
Yeah, there's a total of 4 in the north end of the county.
Yeah,
but
you've got
one thing we're
Amable
running
Road,
into
too.
is we're running out of trucks every day up there and having to send Murfreesboro units up to back them up.
Thank you.
I might add that Mr. Denami, the Rutherford County lobbyist, is engaged in conversations with the delegation as well as the Lee administration about the necessity for an additional forensic center in Tennessee, with Rutherford County being the only location that is qualified to facilitate such a facility. And so it is our hope that we will get some funding, how much I'm not sure, but some funding out of the state in the next Tennessee General Assembly. And it is also our hope that I have spoken to the Christie Houston Foundation, and there's also some interest there, but per their requirements, there has to be some skin in the game on the part of the county before they'll participate in any matching funding. And so I'm not saying that to say that those things can be expected, but I can share with you that those matching funds from the state and the Christie Houston Foundation cannot be expected without a initial investment from the county in the form of an architectural and design engineering fee.
I may have misunderstood, Mr. Chairman. Is the cost of the EMS station would be about what?
The total cost of the EMS station would be anywhere from about $1 million to $1.5 million. Is that right, Brian? But that takes into account the land, and we haven't removed the land, so that actually may be less than that.
The building?
Yes, sir.
$1 million?
Or less. Because we already own the property, and we're going to do a lot of the engineering work for the EMS station because we're locating the forensic center there, if that makes any sense. We're going to do the engineering work for the entire site. The hydrology, the civil work, the soils testing, these kind of things we're going to be done on the remaining 10 acres to find the best location for the forensic center. In order for us to do that, we're going to also find a location for the EMS facility, the future EMS facility there.
Right. I'm talking about the EMS building.
Right.
Less than $1 million, even though the others.
Approximately $1 million. Again, it depends on is it a 1-bay, is it a 2-bay, how's it outfitted? Those kind of things haven't been determined yet. But we can reasonably say on or about $1 million. Would that be correct, Brian? Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to talk about the operating cost of the forensic center.
With that would be fine. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Martin.
Thank you. I do believe at your request, I shared a business plan with you.
Yep.
The operating cost certainly
Give the
won't cost it.
microphone.
Sorry. The operating costs will certainly not exceed what we are currently paying out now. Given the fact that we are split at the moment, we already have a medical examiner office here with investigators, a medical examiner, and myself, along with utilizing our EMS supervisors. So we do have a medical examiner's office here that is in addition to what we have to pay for outsourcing or vendor autopsy service. So by bringing those two divisions together, or those two services together, we will, at this point, it's my projection that we will be paying less per year by several $100,000 than what we are paying currently. And obviously, we'll have better control of our budget at that point. At this point, we've had 3 significant increases in the past 3 years. We never know when the next increase is going to come, but based on the historic, we can certainly expect several over the next few years.
Right, and we've talked about this, and I'm just trying to kind of recap a little bit. The numbers that I've heard from the associations and from other folks kind of in the business are quite a bit higher. And what I'm trying to get a kind of a baseline sense for is the operating cost and then the offsets, fees, avoided costs, things along those lines, estimated additional cost to Rutherford County taxpayers. And the numbers I'm hearing are quite a bit higher than the numbers you've provided. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of go through the numbers, because my concern is that this, okay, I know we're at the architectural design phase, but if we're going to spend $1 million doing this, plus or minus, okay, then what's the down the road operating cost? I mean, we know we're going to have, back up briefly, we know we're taking this out of landfill money, or money to transfer station money, okay?
Michael, you want to explain where this money is coming from?
Okay.
This money, the budget amendment does have the money coming from the money the commission set aside in previous years for an emergency transfer station. Of what there is 4.75 million left. So if this were to pass tonight, there would be 3.75 million left.
So what else is included in emergency transfer station money? Can we use that if there were to be an emergency of some sort?
So that money was committed out of unassigned fund balance by the commission. So at any time, y'all could uncommit that. That is.
Is it only capital, or is it operating as well?
It's for what this body committed it, so you could put it back in unassigned at any time if you wanted.
Commissioner, this was our original Plan B when there were lawsuits getting kicked around about our solid waste disposal with our current landfill. That $5 million that was put away as a safeguard in case we suddenly had to start shipping or find a way to dispose of trash. And that lawsuit, by the way, hadn't been settled yet. And I'm kind of skeptical of letting that money go. But then again, that's just one of the alternatives where the funding could come from.
So but we have a budget amendment right now on the table that would take it out of those funds.
That's correct.
Okay. And so can you give us kind of your operating expenses less, or operating costs less, avoided costs, or fees, for lack of a better term, kind of bottom line number, and then kind of respond to what I'm hearing is probably a $3.5, $4 million operating cost minus 500 autopsies times 2,000, that's $1 million. That would be a significant deficit. So what I wanted to do is give you an opportunity to say, no, that's wrong, and here's why.
Certainly, Commissioner. When you're looking at the 3 to 4 million operating cost, you are looking at a facility that is dealing truly as a regional forensic center. So something like Knox County, where they're dealing with 20 other or 21 other counties, I believe, that they're providing service for. When you're looking at those numbers, you're looking at 80% of it coming from staff. Forensic pathologists, forensic technicians, investigators, admin staff. Obviously, the more cases that you're providing service for, the more autopsies you're performing, the higher number of staff you need. With Rutherford County, we would need a foundational staff if we were just concentrating on Rutherford County and giving priority to Rutherford County, which we need. So our initial foundation crew can start with one forensic pathologist and having a couple of contract forensic pathologists to be able to meet accreditation standards. You can certainly be limited to 2 technicians, forensic technicians, to assist that forensic pathologist. We would move our current crew of medical legal death investigators and supervisor and have additional 2 investigators, which we are going to need within the next couple of years, regardless of whether we have a forensic center. And then an admin person. That's the crew you can certainly start with and meet our accreditation standards. And I say this not because I've just plucked those numbers out of the air. For 14 years, I worked at the Regional Forensic Center in Nashville. I was the Director of Investigations and Director of Technical Services, which includes operations of the autopsy suite and morgue. So I am familiar with the staffing process and the accreditation process that we need to meet. We can certainly cross-train people. That's why we can stick to that foundational crew. So when we're looking at that, like I said, I did provide you some of those numbers. When we're looking at that, the cost of running a forensic center, we're certainly looking at cost savings when you're looking at the 2 operations separately as we have now. We have a medical examiner, county medical examiner's office in Rutherford County, which by statute we have to have. And then we're outsourcing our autopsy to a for-profit vendor service, which we have no control of the budget. They are currently charging us $2,300 per autopsy. So that's over a $750,000 investment every year. That's going to go up. If we have a forensic center, we have some cost recovery options available to us only if we have a forensic center. And they're claims for fees that the state reimburses as a cost recovery or to offset the cost of us performing those autopsies. So there's about $173,000 that we will have in cost recovery. There are some other offsets that we can look at. We would be able to then perform hospital and private autopsies along with that too. So when you're looking at those expenditures of a Rutherford County operations, you're looking at about 1.2, having income recovery or cost recovery of about 300,000. So it would be about a total of about 934,000. As I mentioned, we're already ordering anywhere between 300 and 350 autopsies a year at a cost of $2,300. So without even considering any increases to those costs, which we know are very likely and probable to be coming up again soon, since we've had 3 since 2020. Without a forensic center, it's going to cost us about $1.33.
Okay, so with that staff, you can do how many autopsies?
With the staff I've mentioned, we can do up to 350 autopsies at this point, at that number. As we increase, you're going to have to increase staff. So as we if we do choose to take on other counties and offer that service to them, the income or cost, that they will be paying for an autopsy for fee service would then offset the cost of bringing that additional staff in. So as we increase in numbers, we will certainly have to increase that staff load.
So we're looking at a deficit of about 900,000 plus financing cost for the center?
900,000 compared to about 1.3, yes.
Okay, so plus the financing cost takes you to where, Michael?
Financing costs would be around $1 million a year, give or take. I think you said 12 to 14 million dollars.
Okay, so at that point,
That would be assuming that we didn't get any participation at all from the state or the Christie Houston Foundation.
fair enough. And I'm trying to get a sense, so that basically would take it to $2 million if Rutherford County goes it alone, a deficit for 20 years.
That's correct. Potentially that's correct, but I will say this, that it's the opinion of the Office of the Mayor that this be since this is a regional forensic center, that the cost and the burden of operating this would be shared regionally. And so hopefully Rutherford County would not share that burden alone. Again, that would be determined in the next fiscal year when we have determined who, if anybody, is going to partner with us.
Okay, so the numbers we've been given so far were for Rutherford County alone. And then if we add a regional component on top of it, obviously your operating costs would go up and your avoided cost and whatever would go up as well. I'm trying to get a sense for what's the differential over a period of time.
Right. Unfortunately, Commissioner Irvin, I can't help you with that differential. I can tell you that it's going to be not impossible, but difficult for us to move forward without some partnerships to help offset the financing of the construction costs and the operating costs that you refer to. That is not the model. You're talking about a worst-case scenario, and I understand why you're doing that. I do it too as a businessman. You always work from the worst-case scenario first. You hope for the best and plan for the worst. I get that. But in this scenario, it's important because this is a regional facility. This has regional partners involved. And so this is the first step. The planning and engineering is the first step for us to solicit those partners, whether it's the Christie Houston Foundation, whether it's the state, whether it's MTSU, on and on.
And you mentioned the legislature, and I was trying to get a sense, are there any letters of support, anything along those lines we have at this point?
Those would be extremely premature until we have demonstrated some level of commitment that we're going to do this. So have I had, I guess the follow-up question might be, well, Mr. Mayor, have you had any conversations with the state? Have you had any conversations with other mayors? Have you had conversations with the Christie Houston Foundation? Have you had conversations with MTSU? And the answer would be yes, 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 and yes. And they've all been very affirmative conversations. I would not do a deal based on those conversations. That would not be prudent. But to say that I haven't had conversations and those conversations haven't been positive and productive would be an inaccurate statement.
And then shifting back to the EMS station briefly, do you have a sense for the operating cost for that?
The EMS station, Mr. Gaither? Again, that would be, in my mind, that would be a separate construction package. What we're talking about is design and engineering. We're not talking about a construction package for the forensic center, nor are we talking about a construction package for the EMS facility. The approximate construction package for an EMS facility, two-bay, after talking to Mr. Gaither, would be anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million. But that's not what we're asking for tonight. And that number may change when this body determines that's where we need to proceed off of Weekly Lane with that location.
Right, and so what I'm trying to get a sense for is we're spending $1 million now. What are the out-year costs if there were to be, if we were to approve the construction for the forensic center and the EMS station, both the construction costs and the ongoing operating costs? From what I'm hearing, we'll probably end up financing at least one of those. There might be $1 million we could find. And then The operating cost is probably at least $1 million, might be $2 million under our worst case, and then we have another $750,000.
So I want to remind the committee, the amendment that was put on there that for the EMS station was not an amendment that was offered by the Office of the Mayor. That was offered by Commissioner Beverly in Public Safety. He offered that as a, quote, friendly amendment, but he did not advise me in advance that he was going to propose that amendment. I talked to Michael Smith in engineering after that amendment was proposed, and we determined that the engineering could be done within the scope of the $1 million because it included the whole site, but not the architectural work. So you're asking about an EMS facility that's not a part of this package. That was an amendment offered in public safety that I had no advance notice of. So I haven't done the metrics, the cost-benefit analysis that you're asking for, Commissioner, because that wasn't a part of the original budget amendment we're requesting for tonight. I think we can do the engineering work within the general scope. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I'm not willing to say that I can tell you what the operating costs are other than what the operating costs are associated with any other EMS facility. I know there's a genuine need up there, a serious need because of response times, and this is something that I would advocate for, but it got rolled into this without my prior knowledge.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get all the data before we move forward with potentially even the design work to make sure there's some viability there, and we can basically afford it.
I wouldn't bring it to you, Commissioner, if I didn't think it was both viable and affordable without in any way causing any harm to this budget. I will not do that under any set of circumstances. I won't do it. So I appreciate your literally going through this with a fine-tooth comb. I really do. But I have too gone through this. I will not jeopardize this budget or subsequent budgets for a project like this. Won't do it.
Chairman Phillips, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can summarize what came out of public safety, the discussion was 95% in relation to the agenda item, which was the Forensic Center. The questions that were asked dealt with geotechnical engineering of that piece of property and the design work. The design work is important. Once again, what came out of public safety, the design work was important to send a message to those who are potential donors, the state of Tennessee and Christy Houston especially, that we are serious about this. Without that commitment on the county's part, the probability of this happening lessens quite a bit. So this money is seed money for us to move forward with this process. If we do the engineering work, if we do the geotechnical work, all of that is in place. Next year, in next year's budget, the cost of building that, we'll have probably some information as to additional funding to offset the cost to the county. And if there is no additional funding, we as a commission could put an end to it right then. The $1 million that we're talking about is still money well spent because all of that work will be done if we want to go forward with it the year after, or the year after, or the year after. So it's not money that we're throwing down a well. It's money that's being wisely spent, seed money, for us to move forward and getting additional money from the state and or other organizations such as Christy Houston. So this money is seed money. Then all of the other particular cost would be worked out before we will actually begin the building process. And then we'll have that opportunity to get the answers to those questions and decide whether or not we want to build it next year or sometime in the future. So the way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I understand it, is that this is important for us to move forward with this process, and we're not committing to building it, but what we are committing to doing is to saying that there's a need there, and this is the building that we want to build, and hopefully with our legislative delegation on board helping with this, and Mr. Denami helping with this, we will get some additional funding. So that will cut down the cost of building this facility greatly. So just trying to summarize what come out of public safety is that this money is important for us to move forward, but not a commitment to build next year. Hopefully, and we're prayerfully moving forward with that process of getting additional funding. This commissioner, and as well as several others, are hopeful that our commitment with this seed money will put a positive note to the state of Tennessee that we're serious. They know that this is needed, and they'll make that commitment to help financing this project in Rutherford County. So even though we may not build it next year if that funding doesn't come through, the money is still well-spent money because the geotechnical work will have already been done, and the engineering work the design would have already been done, and when we can move forward with that years in the future, that will already be done and we won't have to do it again. So to summarize that, it's seed money to show everyone that Rutherford County is serious in wanting this forensic center for Middle Tennessee.
Anybody else in the committee got a comment? Mr. Piercy.
I have a question. EMS station and the forensic center going to be built at the same location?
They will be built on the same plat, but not in the same building, to be very clear.
The same property?
Yes, sir.
Same property?
Yes, sir.
Can we separate the EMS station from the forensic center and vote on them separately?
Yes, you may.
You said, now this, best I can tell, this is for design?
This is for the design, engineering, and geotechnical that Commissioner Phillips referred to. That's correct. Okay. So this gets us a set of architectural plans and the approval for the site, for the engineering of the site. Yes, sir.
Not architectural for the building?
Yes, sir. It includes architectural for the forensic center.
But you said a few minutes ago you already had the architect design for the EMS station.
Because we have built previous EMS stations and they tend to come from a standardized blueprint.
Then why is this on here? Why is the EMS
because
station? Because
Commissioner Beverly put it on there.
I would like to make the motion to separate these two, vote the forensic center, and then vote the EMS design or whatever we're doing there.
All right, I've got a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second to separate these two items? And a second. Any discussion?
Can I clarify, is the motion really to approve the forensic center and not separate it, but leave off the ambulance service, or is this
the
just
motion
to separate?
is to separate the request.
Okay.
One request being the forensic center, the second request being the EMS station.
You're gonna
vote on them separately.
Okay.
Not approving nothing
One
but
or the
separating them. We're going to vote on it separate.
Okay. I don't know that you need a motion to do that. You would just need a motion to approve whatever you're going to approve.
Let's go ahead
because nothing's been approved.
I understand that. Well, let's go ahead and make this vote. That way we're clear on what we're talking about, because it is kind of muddy in the waters when we're talking about two different projects. Any other discussion?
If I could just add a comment to that, Mr. Chairman, I think the motion that came out by Commissioner Beverly was the geotechnical, as long as we're doing the geotechnical work on that piece of property, to include the section that would encumber the, if I'm not mistaken, the EMS station. It wasn't for the design work, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
With great deference, Mr. Chairman, you're incorrect. The funding for architectural and engineering fees for a forensic center and EMS station. That was the motion. That was adopted by Public Safety.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion from the committee? And a yes vote on this would split these into two different,
So, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Sereno.
we're going to vote on to separate the
Right, it's not saying yes or no to either one of them, it's just we will consider them separately as separate items. Mark, call roll.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
no.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
No.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
No.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Motion fails 3-4.
Okay, so we're still looking at a combined project. Any other discussion from the committee about the project and the original request of a forensic center and EMS station doing the engineering and...
I want to make something really clear. Commissioner Beverly made the amendment. I have to tell you, it gave me a bit of heartburn when the amendment was adopted because we hadn't accounted for that particular part of the financing of it. But I did speak to both Michael Smith and did some consulting with the proposal from Mr. Klein, and so we believe we can get the architectural and engineering for both the Forensic Center and EMS worked out within that $1 million. We believe that's capable, and with a high degree of confidence. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't misleading the committee that when we split it, that we had to split it. We didn't have to split it. I would have preferred we split it, but regardless, the two are together. We can make it work.
Anybody else on the committee have a comment? I want to say something myself, but I don't want to jump the gun on anybody else. Oh, okay. Hearing no other comments, I'll go ahead and make my statement. I am in favor of having a forensic center. I am not in favor of spending this $1 million out of where they're pulling it from. I am not in favor of doing it right now. We have Will Denami, who has successfully lobbied the state for a forensic center, and I think it was it Chattanooga? I forget where it was, but anyway, he's done that. And what we're basically doing is asking for money for a building that we don't know we're going to have funding for. Let's find out if we get the funding. If we do, it takes about 2 months to do the bioengineering, biotechnical work that has to be done, and go from there. I don't see the rush to go ahead and do this and spend $1 million there. Two, I have a problem with where that $1 million is being pulled from. But again, this is something that we need. We're growing. I think that in the future, yes, and that future may be this fall, later this fall. You know, I'd like to think that Will's going to come back to us and say, hey, the legislature's on board and we're going to get this approved and get a grant approved from the state. That's what I look to see and what I hope for. But anyway, my opinion is we're jumping the gun here. Now, since they tied the EMS station on there, I'd be more likely to approve an EMS station in the north end of the county because of the call volumes there. We're having to yank all our vehicles out of the rest of the county just to keep it covered. I'm not on public safety right now, but I have been in the past, and I know that that area is critical as far as the growth that we're having and the number of wrecks we've got. I mean, that's interchange city, you know, and it's not just because of the factories that are there, although that adds to the traffic and the accidents, but you got I-840, you got I-24, all these other roads come together. There's a definite need for that EMS station in that part of the county. I've said my piece, so. Any other questions for the mayor or our director? Any comments y'all want to make? Do I hear a motion? Approve or disapprove, or let it lay?
Mr. Chairman, so we're going to vote on the 1 million for the two center, right?
It would be 1 million for the Bart Klein to do the engineering for the forensic building, and also the geotechnical for the entire property, where both EMS and the proposed center would be located.
All right.
That's my understanding. Is that correct, Michael, the way you see it?
The budget amendment tonight would be for architectural and engineering fees for both the forensic center and the EMS station, which would include the geotechnical for the entire site for both facilities.
Thank you.
Okay, that's been explained. Are there any other questions? If not, like I said, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
And what is your motion? Go ahead and elaborate.
Approve.
Has a motion to approve the center and spending $1 million from the committed fund balance. Do I hear a second?
Mr.
Yeah, I
Srinio
did
seconded.
second.
Mr. Srinio seconded it.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
No.
Commissioner Srinio?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
No.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
No.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner P?
No.
Motion fails.
Chairman P.,
Commissioner.
I'd like to take the opportunity to encourage the EMS man to try to bring back his wants on a separate situation, because it is needed down there on that end of the county.
I think they've heard that. So, next item is item 19, drug fund and special purpose budget amendments.
So this budget amendment is moving money between Fund 122 to Fund 121. This money got put in the wrong fund in last fiscal year, and this is us correcting a coding error between these two funds.
Okay, you've heard the explanation. Basically, we're making a bookkeeping correction. Do I hear a motion or further discussion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinio?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Okay, that gets us to other business, and we have 3 items now since we've got our attorney hanging around. First is a health department contract that we got in late, and if you would come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron Cumby, Director of your Rutherford County Health Department. What we have presented today is our annual grant contract between the state and the county. This represents the pass-through funding that covers salary and benefits for the majority of our county health department staff. This is for fiscal year 2024. The county would pay the salary and then bill the state for reimbursement. This year's contract, pertinent to a question we had from Chairman Phillips at our Health and Ed, this year's contract does reflect the increase for county raises that were approved by this body last year.
Any questions for the director?
Mr. Chairman, we heard this in public, in health and education, and it's what we do, I think, every year, and everything was in order. My motion is to accept the contract.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinio?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, sir. Okay, our next item is Michael Smith's yearly evaluation. And I'm going to ask Sonia to come up and share the information with us, please. Yeah. Before we do that, I've had a request for a 5-minute break. We'll do that while she's handing that out. We'll go ahead and call us back into order. Ask Ms. Stevens to come up.
Okay, good evening. So I tried to recap this in a way that would make it a little bit easier to read. So there were 10 questions that were asked on the survey, and then the 11th question was a comment box if anybody who participated in the survey had additional questions. We had 15 of the 21 commissioners participate in the survey. So the first one was assist county commissioners in achieving a proficient financial management system for the county, and 14 of the individuals said yes, that Michael was extremely knowledgeable. One said other, but there was no response, so I don't know what that means unless they weren't on the budget committee. Second, compiles the annual operating expenditure budget along with financial estimates for the budget committee in accordance with the approved timeline. 13 said yes, 2 said other, and the comment was not on the budget committee. Number 3, prepares and presents a monthly financial report to the budget committee to allow accurate tracking of the annual budget. 13 said yes, 2 said other and not on budget. 4, displays willingness and ability to adjust to change in assignment schedule and procedures in a timely manner. 14 said yes, no one said usually, 1 said sometimes, none said rarely, and none said never. And the comment was very good at response to requests, very helpful with this during the budget process. 5, communicates information in a clear and accurate and respectful manner. 14 said yes, none said no, and 1 said other. And it says Michael is very accessible and explains in simple terms. Focuses on achieving positive financial conditions for the county. 14 said yes, 1 said other. 7 was takes personal responsibility for the quality and timeliness of work. 13 says always, and 2 says usually, and none said sometimes or rarely nor never. 8, achieves results with little oversight of the Budget and Finance Committee. 11 said strongly agree, 3 said agree, and 1 said cannot answer, not on the Budget Committee. 9, demonstrates appropriate independent action, self-application, and innovation to achieve results. 13 said always, 2 said usually. 10, displays a positive, cooperative, and respectful approach when interacting with other county employees as well as constitutional officers, appointed officials, or directors. And 14 said extremely helpful, and 1 said somewhat helpful, and a comment on that was outstanding. Some of the comments, and I won't read all of them, but some of the highlights were great hire, smart, common sense, accessible, and helpful. Rutherford County is lucky to have Michael. As a first-time commissioner, I greatly appreciate Michael taking so much of his time to explain so much of the information in a manner that can be understood by everyone. Apparently, someone on the committee wants snacks brought to them during the budget process. We can't imagine who that may be. The others were, he's always available to respond to questions and requests that come up on short notice, as well as monthly discussions about matters coming before the Budget Committee. Michael's presentations are clear, detailed to the extent appropriate, and balanced as to perspective. His understanding and ability to communicate both sides of a budgetary or finance matter, especially as it relates to Rutherford County boards or other interested groups, is one of his strengths. His efforts and initiatives to improve the financial systems and financial condition of Rutherford County are exemplary. Let's see, another one, he's an asset. His learning curve was short. I am pleased with his job performance. Rutherford County is fortunate to have Michael. Those are some of the comments that were listed. So I would say that this was an excellent first performance evaluation for somebody who's not even been here a year. So I'd like to thank Michael for all of his time and efforts, and for everybody who participated. Are there any questions or? No? Okay.
Just, we're going to try to work on streamlining this process as far as getting the survey out to us. We've got some different options, and we'll try to make that a lot easier to access in the coming year. But I want to thank you so much for your help with doing that. And having said that, I think it's only fair that we ask Michael to give us a shot back. Is there anything we can do to help you, or something we could use some instruction on, Michael?
No, it's been a great first year here. I believe there's someone in my department, who one of the commissioners kind of gives her a hard time. I think she's complained to HR a few times, but that's the only thing. I'm not sure who that is. But no, seriously, it's been a great first year. And I want to say one shout out to the finance staff. It wouldn't have been as good as first year without the staff I have in the finance office and without Miss Lisa Nolan being a phone call away. So just thanks. And y'all have been awesome to work with as well.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, just
yes,
if I may add a comment. I think early in the year, Director Smith asked me, what are your expectations of me? And I basically said, I know you got 21 commissioners to talk with, department heads, and mayor. I said, just be accessible as much as possible. 100% accessible to me, I know, whether it's phone calls, stopping by the office. Also, I asked him to give me the facts. Don't worry about my feelings. Don't give me answers that he thinks I want to hear, but what are truthful, and I need to trust him. And I can say that 100% I trust this guy, and I'm glad that we hired him, a great hire. I know he works, hopefully he works well, is what I see with the people in his office. And I think whoever made the comment that he had a very short learning curve was correct. So, Michael, thank you.
Okay.
Again, but with the long budget meetings, snacks would be appropriate, I think. So
There you go. There you go. We'll keep that in mind. All right. That ends our regular session for a moment. We do have this other business where we're going to go into executive session, and we're going to have to ask everyone to leave other than the commissioners and our mayor and, of course, our attorneys. Resume our meeting at this time. We were discussing item 11, which was the general fund budget amendment for emergency management. And Mr. Clark, you can come up if you'd like to, and we can recap the motion here.
Chris Clark, Public Safety Director. Emergency Management is requesting a budget amendment from unsigned fund balance of $454,497. Move to 312, contracts with private agencies.
Okay, we have had some discussion, and just so the audience knows, we did go into private session with our attorney and have come back. There was no deliberation during that time. At any rate, this is back to our committee where we're looking at spending $454,497, which is a contract that we have for maintenance with the Motorola company for our emergency services, tools. I guess just about every agency we've got is on this system now. Anyway, any discussion or questions from the committee?
So moved with the motion, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Call roll.
Could I ask what the motion is, since I wasn't in here for half
The
of it?
motion is to approve $454,497 from moving from unassigned fund balance to pay.
As presented, as it's presented on the iPad? Okay.
Yes.
That was a motion by Commissioner Gooch.
Gooch, seconded by Piercy.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Strino,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. That is the end of our other business, unless someone has got something I'm not aware of. We're adjourned.